Canada's economy is often described as independent, sovereign, and resilient. Yet when trade trucks cross the southern border by the thousands every day, oil pipelines flow south, and factories on both sides operate as one system, a serious question emerges. Does the United States merely influence Canada's economy, or does it effectively shape it? The answer is not simple control, but neither is it full independence. The relationship is built on geography, history, and deep economic integration that gives the United States extraordinary leverage, especially during times of trade tension. Canada's economic orientation has always followed a north-south axis rather than east-west. Geography alone made this inevitable. Major Canadian population centers lie within 200 kilometers of the U.S. border, while east-west transportation across provinces historically faced higher costs and barriers. This natural pull toward the American market deepened with formal agreements. The Canada-United States Free Trade Agreement of 1989 removed major tariffs and locked in cross-border access. It was followed by NAFTA in 1994, which integrated North American production at a scale never seen before. When USMCA replaced NAFTA in 2020, it modernized digital trade and labor rules, but preserved the same deep integration that had already taken root. By the early 2000s, approximately 85% of Canadian merchandise exports were going to the United States. This was not imposed by force, but driven by market logic. Canada gained reliable access to the world's largest consumer economy, while U.S. firms gained stable access to energy, raw materials, and skilled labor. For years, this relationship worked smoothly, and Canada frequently ran a goods trade surplus with the United States. The numbers reveal the scale of dependence. In 2023 and 2024, roughly 75% of Canada's merchandise exports were sold to the United States. Even after diversification efforts and tariff disruptions, that share still hovered around 68 to 70% in mid-2025. Two-way goods and services trade exceeded $900 billion annually before the latest tariff cycle. Trade represents approximately 67% of Canada's GDP, compared to roughly 24% for the United States. This difference alone explains the imbalance and vulnerability. Canada's exports to the United States are highly concentrated. Energy products, particularly crude oil, account for approximately 30 to 33% of exports. Automobiles and auto parts represent around 15%, followed by machinery, metals, and agricultural products. By contrast, Canadian exports represent only about 15 to 20% of total U.S. exports. Canada is the United States' largest trading partner by value, but proportionally, the U.S. economy can absorb shocks far more easily. Between 2024 and 2025, Canada exported approximately $420 billion in goods to the United States, while importing roughly $350 billion. This left Canada with an estimated trade surplus of $50 to $70 billion. These figures demonstrate mutual benefit, but they also highlight asymmetry. When trade flows are disrupted, the impact on Canada is faster and deeper. Beyond trade, the two economies operate as a single production system in many sectors. In the automotive industry, a single vehicle may cross the border 6 or 7 times before final assembly. In energy, Canada supplies approximately 60% of U.S. crude oil imports, making it America's most critical external energy partner. Manufacturing decisions made in U.S. boardrooms directly affect employment in Ontario, Quebec, and the Prairies. American foreign direct investment in Canada spans resources, finance, technology, and manufacturing, supporting jobs while also anchoring decision-making outside Canadian borders. Monetary policy creates another layer of influence. When the U.S. Federal Reserve raises interest rates, capital flows, exchange rates, and inflation expectations in Canada are affected almost immediately. The Bank of Canada remains independent, but its policy space narrows when U.S. economic cycles shift. Historically, recessions in the United States have been followed closely by downturns in Canada, underscoring how deeply linked the two economies are. This influence turned into direct pressure in 2025, when trade tensions escalated. The United States imposed tariffs citing national security concerns, supply chain risks, and border enforcement issues. Tariffs reached 25% on certain non-USMCA compliant goods, 10% on energy products, and later increases targeted steel, aluminum, and automotive components. These measures did not fully shut down trade, but they altered incentives across industries. Canada initially saw export front-loading in early 2025 as firms rushed shipments ahead of tariff deadlines. This temporarily boosted growth figures. However, by mid-year, exports to the United States declined in several consecutive months. Canada's share of exports going south fell to historic lows near 68%, not because dependence disappeared, but because trade slowed. Growth projections for 2025 were revised downward to approximately 1 to 1.5% compared to earlier forecasts. Manufacturing employment softened, particularly in auto-producing regions, and business investment slowed amid uncertainty. Canada responded with retaliatory tariffs and accelerated efforts to diversify trade toward Europe and Asia. At the same time, USMCA exemptions provided partial relief. By mid-2025, approximately 85 to 95% of bilateral trade still qualified for duty-free treatment under USMCA rules. This cushioning effect prevented a sharper contraction but did not eliminate vulnerability. The episode demonstrated a clear reality. The United States can apply trade pressure with comparatively less economic self-harm. Yet influence does not equal control. Canada retains full sovereignty over fiscal policy, monetary policy, and regulatory decisions. The Bank of Canada continues to operate independently. Government spending priorities remain domestically determined. In 2025, non-U.S. exports increased as a share of total trade, reflecting real, if gradual, diversification. Canadian energy, technology, and agricultural exports found new markets, though none yet matched the scale of the U.S. market. Mutual dependence also runs both ways. The United States relies on Canada for secure energy supplies, critical minerals, and integrated manufacturing capacity that enhances North American competitiveness against global rivals. As many economists note, this integration strengthens both economies. Influence in this context is structural rather than coercive. Similar dynamics exist between other neighboring economies, including Mexico and the United States, or smaller European states and Germany. Looking ahead, the 2026 USMCA review looms as a critical moment. Renegotiation risks, rule changes, or renewed tariff threats could reshape incentives once again. At the same time, Canada is working to reduce interprovincial trade barriers, improve east-west infrastructure, and expand access to global markets. These efforts aim not to sever ties with the United States, but to rebalance them. Deep integration has brought prosperity, stability, and scale to Canada's economy. It has also created exposure. The events of 2025 made that exposure visible. The United States does not control Canada's economy, but it holds extraordinary influence through trade concentration, supply chain integration, and asymmetric power. The challenge for Canada is not choosing independence over partnership, but finding resilience within partnership. Highlighted factual sentences suitable for sourcing. Approximately 75% of Canadian merchandise exports went to the United States in 2023 to 2024. Trade accounts for roughly 67% of Canada's GDP, compared to about 24% for the United States. Canada supplies nearly 60% of U.S. crude oil imports. Two-way Canada-U.S. trade exceeded $900 billion annually before 2025 tariffs. USMCA replaced NAFTA in 2020 while preserving deep economic integration. Canada's share of exports to the United States fell to approximately 68% in mid-2025. Tariffs of up to 25% were applied to certain non-USMCA compliant goods in 2025. Automotive supply chains often cross the Canada-US border multiple times before final assembly. Canada ran an estimated goods trade surplus of 50 to 70 billion US dollars with the United States in 2024 to 2025. Economic downturns in the United States have historically coincided with recessions in Canada. By mid-2025, 85 to 95% of bilateral trade still qualified for USMCA duty-free treatment. Canada's GDP growth outlook for 2025 was revised to approximately 1 to 1.5%. The 1989 Canada-United States Free Trade Agreement marked the start of modern economic integration. Non-U.S. export shares increased in 2025 as Canada pursued diversification. The USMCA agreement is scheduled for formal review in 2026. If you want, I can next.